When we think of the fall of Rome, we usually imagine a single, catastrophic night. We picture fire, screaming, and a flood of Goths pouring over the walls in 410 AD. But history is rarely that cinematic. Rome didn't collapse overnight. It eroded, decision by decision, policy by policy. This is the anatomy of a superpower's long goodbye. Rome began as a republic built on checks and balances. No one man was supposed to be above the law, but the transition to empire traded liberty for stability. In the past, this worked, but absolute power has a shelf life. By the early 3rd century, the Senate was a glorified social club. The emperor wasn't a leader, he was a god-king. When the man at the top is the only thing holding the gears together, and that man happens to be a lunatic, a child, or a tyrant, the gears don't just slip, they grind to a halt. The Roman spirit, the civitas, was replaced by a massive, bloated bureaucracy that cared more about its own survival than the people it governed. In its prime, the Roman legion was a tool of the state. By the end, the state was a tool of the legion. During the crisis of the 3rd century, Rome had 26 different emperors in just 50 years. Most were generals who were declared emperor by their troops, reigned for a few months, and were then assassinated by the next guy. To keep the throne, an emperor had to buy the army's loyalty with massive donatives, bonuses. The result? The military stopped protecting the borders and started playing kingmaker. To pay for those army bonuses and the massive bureaucracy, Rome did something modern governments love. They debased their currency. In the early empire, the denarius was nearly 95% pure silver. By the late 3rd century, it was less than 5% silver.
A whole sack of silver for one loaf of bread.
This is madness.
The math of ruin. More coins with less silver. Hyperinflation. Prices skyrocketed. Trade collapsed because no one trusted the money. The middle class was wiped out, leaving only the ultra-wealthy elite in their fortified villas and a massive, starving underclass. Rome didn't lose its wealth, it lost its economy. Rome was a victim of its own success. Its borders were too long to patrol and too expensive to maintain. To solve the manpower shortage, they started outsourcing the military. They hired Germanic tribes, the very people they were supposed to be keeping out, to guard the walls. These were the foederati. They were Romans on paper, but they had no loyalty to the Roman idea. They were mercenaries. When the paychecks stopped being silver and started being promises, these guards simply opened the gates. You cannot defend a civilization with a military that doesn't believe in the civilization. For centuries, the barbarians were there. They weren't a new threat. The difference wasn't that the Goths or Vandals got stronger, it was that Rome became too hollow to resist. In 476 AD, when the last emperor, Romulus Augustulus, was deposed, it wasn't even front-page news. The infrastructure had already failed. The mail had stopped running. The aqueducts were breaking. The fall was just the final sigh of a patient who had been in a coma for 100 years. This was the end for the once mighty Roman Empire.